Hello. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the solo podcast by yours truly, CL Chen, who's also on a mission to make Asians great again, hence the hat. Look at this hat. Fucking sexy, right? I remember when I wore this out at the nightlife area in Hong Kong. Definitely got a lot of praises. Some people came up to me and was like, hell yeah, man. They wanted a photo and everything. Anyway, today we're going to talk about some of the dating differences between Asians and not Asians. So, if you didn't know, I used to live mostly abroad in the Western world. I've pretty much lived everywhere that most digital nomads would want to live at, be it Australia, North America, most of Europe. Um, I've spent a lot of time abroad. Let's just put it that way. I've probably ever since I turned 18, I've spent more time overseas than in Asia, where I am now. So if you didn't know, I moved back to Asia about 2 years ago. Originally, I moved back to Hong Kong, and then since then, I spent mostly my time in Asia, mainly in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Tokyo, Seoul, Korea, a bit of Bali. Yeah, that's been most of my time for the last 2 years. To bring it back to dating, I used to date mostly Western girls. I think back in the day, my type was more, it was very basic. I feel like a lot of Asian guys like this, like blonde hair, blue eyes, Russian, like hot white girl. Like the paler, the better. Almost like the more white, the better. But now, as of 2 years now, I genuinely prefer Asian girls, be it on the outside, right? Just talking about looks, or on the inside. So, specifically, why that is, we'll leave for another video. But today, we're going to focus on the main differences that I have found between dating Asians versus not. So let's get into it. By the way, before we get into it, make sure you leave a comment because this is a new YouTube channel. So if you're watching this, I would love for you to engage with me. Okay? Anyway, let's get back into it. So, because I'm a very professional solo podcaster, I actually have a list of notes written here in possibly the worst handwriting in the world. So, first things first is that not all Asians are the same. And one thing that I like to look at, one variable that I like to look at in order to gauge what type of Asian this is how much Western influence do they have in their upbringing, in their psychology. So, for example, an ABC, American born Chinese, an Asian who looks Asian, but they grew up in the States, they grew up in Australia, grew up in the UK, that person is gonna feel very white compared to someone who has lived their whole life in China. I'll use a story to illustrate this example. I remember when I was in New York and LA for about 3 months last year, I was, living my best life as a single guy, going on dates. And I went on some date with some Asian girls. How do I put it in a gentlemanly way? But let's just say that girls there were very sexually liberated. If they liked you, it doesn't matter if it's the first date you just met or you're her cousin. No, I'm just kidding. If you're her cousin, that's probably off the table. Unless you're from like Texas or something. So I've heard. But it doesn't matter if it's quick. They are down to sleep with you. The culture there, the Western culture with Western movies, Western music, just create a lot more sexually liberated and open minded people. And if you compare that to the experience that I had when I first moved back to China, I remember when I moved back to China, I was in Chengdu, which is a city in China that's actually known for being open minded. But I remember at that time, I dated a girl who, when we first slept together, I think it was our second or third date or something, her behavior changed entirely after we slept together. It went from we were very chill, very casual, to suddenly almost expecting boyfriend behavior from me. And it's not like I was really giving her that feeling either. I was just being me, the same me in America. Like, I was just being me, being chill, being casual. But her behavior completely shifted. And I think that says something about the mindset and the psychology of probably a large group of people in China, which you can argue and say as more traditional, more conservative, traditional is probably the right word. She's probably thinking, oh, something physical happened. Now you are my boyfriend, or now we are supposed to be this, thing, whatever it's called. Like we're supposed to be seeing each other now. Whereas when I was in America, it felt more like, okay, we slept together and now you do you, I do me. Oh, you want to meet? Oh, that's a surprise. Anyway, we can hang out again. There was less expectations after sex in America than in China. So obviously, this is like a small thing. You might be listening to this and like, hey, it's not very significant. Why are you bringing this up? But with this tiny difference, you can actually extrapolate and just predict the psychology of the individual. Someone who is more sexually liberated is more likely to be more open minded. The type of humor and the type of beliefs that they have, you can not necessarily predict, but on average, there's going to be a difference. So I remember when I first moved back to China, there was actually an adjustment period when it comes to kind of like developing my riz again, especially because in Chinese, I didn't feel as comfortable. But also in terms of what is cool and people's psychology here, what is cool, what is acceptable, what is cool within a group setting versus what isn't. That is a little bit different. Obviously there is universally or what is attractive. Like emotionally intelligence is attractive across all cultures. Being confident is attractive across all cultures. But what that means and how that manifests, what it looks like is different. So for example, in American culture, girls fucking drool over a guy who's a little bit cocky and like bad boy and yeah, just a little bit of a douchebag. And obviously, I'm not saying all girls like that, but if we're talking in terms of averages, there will be more girls that like that than more collectivist culture like Japan, Russia, China, where if a girl senses that behavior, is more likely to come across as childish, immature, not classy. So I really felt that when I was coming back from the Western world, integrating back into Asian society. And even in just a social hangout setting, oh, suddenly I feel like a lot of my jokes are very cheesy or try hard. Yeah, and if you're on a date with a girl, that cheesy shit, when you try to say things like, oh, da da da, you're gonna be my wife, or like, oh, we're gonna go on a honeymoon together, like whatever you say in English, right? In the right moment, that's considered like good riz in the Western world, especially if you translate it to Chinese is not the same. And it most likely isn't going to work unless you can feel that, hey, the person you're talking to right now, they're going to appreciate it. So, yes, what is cool and what is considered riz, what is attractive is different subtly across cultures. And next point I want to touch on is when Asian women say that they prefer white guys and why I think that is. So, you got to keep in mind that Asian men a lot of times are more timid, they are smaller built, they are more emotionally closed off. In Chinese, a lot of Asian girls mention that 外国人比较会给情绪价值. That means Westerners know how to give more emotional value. They know how to communicate in an emotional way, be it in terms of a compliment, oh, you look beautiful tonight, or just showing more affection. So obviously there's a lot of reasons for why an Asian girl would say that they prefer a white guy. But me personally, I've dated a lot of Asian girls or even white girls that say they don't date Asian guys, that say they prefer white guys or black guys or Latinos and no Asians. But you have to think about why that is. Sure, some people just have so much trauma that their mind just works in a different way where it's so black and white for them, where they cannot consider you as a possibility. Okay, fine. That might be true for some girls. But a lot of girls are just attracted to the characteristics, the trait behind Western guys. So Western guys are more dominant, they're more socially proactive. Like if they see a girl at the bar, they're more likely to just go up and say what's up and not play games. They're more upfront about their intentions. Asian guys are more respectful and by extension, sometimes more timid. So there's a lot of possibility, potential for growth for most Asian guys. And I think if you integrate your Asian side, which is more introspective, which is more intellectual, deep, smart, hardworking, loyal, dedicated, if you can integrate that with developing sort of like a Western style charisma, be it being socially confident, expressive, knowing how to vibe, knowing how to have fun, knowing how to emotionally compliment people. If you can integrate both of those sides, you're gonna be very fucking attractive. That was really the journey that I went on, I believe, because I came from a full Asian background. So up until I was 13 years old, I went to an all Asian school. And then all of a sudden, I got switched to a white people international school where suddenly there was a lot of white kids. And for some reason, at that time when I was 13, I decided that I'd hang out more with the white kids. I think deep down, I was attracted to their extroversion and their expressiveness. All of a sudden, like people are wild, people are having fun. Compare that to my old group of Asian friends, where actually I was the most expressive, the most wild, the most extroverted one. So suddenly I felt like it was a good match. But I went through a journey to ultimately kind of like learn how to be attractive in the Western world. It was a lot of the things that I just mentioned, learning how to express yourself instead of like holding everything in. Sometimes you just talk, you just vibe, you just express just for the sake of it. And in a dating context, that is very attractive. I'd say the traditional, so I'm not talking about westernized Asians now, I'm talking about traditional Asians. Their communication style is definitely more closed off. People are less likely to talk about their emotions. Like, for example, in the West, they might ask amongst the couple, like, hey, where do you see this going? Or like, what are you looking for? In a traditional Asian culture, that is definitely less common. I'll give you a story to illustrate. This is not so much to do with dating, but still a good story nonetheless. I remember when I first moved back to Asia, I was in Chengdu, the city I mentioned, and I got invited by a group of very local Chinese friends to go out, and they had a table at a nightclub. So we were just chilling, we were having drinks. There was a group of people and they were playing these kind of drinking games. And I remember I asked the girl next to me, oh, like, so what do you do for work? A question that I thought was very normal to ask. And my friend, after the night was over, he brought that up. And then he's like, oh, why did you ask that question? That was so weird. I was like, what do you mean? Isn't that a very normal question to ask? I feel like it is in most of the world. And he said, bro, me and this girl, we have hung out more than 10 times now, and we still don't know what each other does. That to me was very symbolic of the type of socialization or the type of vibe that exists in some Asian groups where they don't really know how to socialize. I don't know how else to put it. They socialize in a way that is very just designed or set by their culture. It's like, oh, we come out, we play these games, and that's how we bond. It's not like we come out and we ask each other like thought provoking questions that dig into the psyche and the soul of the other person. So, again, with this type of social norms, you can extrapolate. You can kind of guess, okay, what would their energy be like? They'd probably be more tense. They'd probably have a psychology where they speak their mind less. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. Make sure you let me know what you think in the comment section below. I actually have a couple more points, but my throat is kind of giving out. And also, I got delivery food coming. It just arrived. I got a call. So thank you for watching. If you're still watching this, I will see you next time.